Welcome to Feeling Asian, a podcast where two Asians talk about their feelings. I'm Youngmi Mayer.
And I'm Brian Park. Youngmi, this feels weird.
It feels so weird. It's been because we did a bunch of episodes and then so we had a little break. For the first time in years, we weren't like scrambling to record right before the due date.
We went a little too hard. We were prepared and we decided to reward ourselves with a nice vacation.
Yeah, and it was great timing because it was right after our show, and that felt like nice. Like we did this show and then we had a break.
Yeah. So listeners, this is our first time recording. We're back in the studio, aka over Zoom, in 2 weeks.
Bedroom.
I feel rusty.
I feel rusty. I'm like, what do I do? I'm just like, I switched from coffee to tea recently.
Okay.
Because let me tell you something. I don't like coffee and I like tea. And I was like, why am I forcing myself to drink coffee every day? Life is short, you know?
Because coffee is fucking amazing and better than tea in every single way imaginable.
But I just make really strong tea. Like Earl Grey tea.
I hate tea.
Really?
There's very few things that I hate.
The flavor is so much better.
Flavor is better.
You hate tea?
Yeah, I hate tea.
What kind of person hates tea?
Now, this is going to be a bad dad joke. I like tea, as in I like gossip. I like hearing the truth. But when it comes to tea, the texture of it, I hate it. It's, you know, snails, when they walk or if you see any tentacle, it leaves like that like slimy entrail goo. Slimy. That tea gives me that feeling going down my throat. Like it's too slippery.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I've never felt that with tea. Really? Wait, let me try to drink this.
It's fine. I would never choose it over coffee. It's just fine. I don't like it.
Slippery. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so every single kind of tea does that to you?
Yeah. Some more than others.
That.
Maybe it's psychosomatic, but
maybe.
Yeah, overrated.
That's okay. Live your truth, Brian. Don't drink tea. Well, I think so. I feel like I guess this is, Feeling Asian, Brian. If anything, we have the one thing that we give to our listeners is we're real and honest. Brian and I had like a little rough. We give him the tea that Brian hates to drink. Brian and I had a little rough patch, and we took a little break from each other, which was nice. I think we sort of recalibrated our emotions about the podcast.
Yeah, mommy and daddy had to take a little break.
Stop. And so I think Brian and I were discussing, whether or not we should really talk about it on the podcast. But I feel like that's what they're here for. That's the tea, right?
They're here for the good tea.
The good tea. But I guess before, we talk about that, because it is kind of awkward. I'm really excited because I just want to tell the listeners that this might not happen, but I reached out to the Natalie Lee's representation for Love is Blind, and I just told Brian, and I really want her to come on the podcast. And Brian hasn't watched it, so I was giving him the tea about Love is Blind. Listeners, wouldn't that be so fun to? Because I'm fucking dying to know. I'm dying to know if she told Shane if she was Asian before they met, right?
I'm dying to know.
Aren't you dying?
Youngmi gave me the best recap, and I'm dying to know.
Because you can't really, you can, but you're not supposed to ask about what they look like physically. But race is sort of different, because it's I don't know. Do you know what I mean, Brian? Do you know what I mean? It's different than oh, what do you look like? Right. I don't know. I really hope she comes on the podcast. I really want to ask her.
I'm curious how much they edit out to ensure that they conceal the racial identity, because so many of my interests are just intertwined with being Asian American, or just Asian for that matter. If they ask you what do you like to eat? Oh, I love Korean food, Thai food. I love shin ramen. The predator's cut. We can't use that.
No, I feel like you could be any race. Let's let's all be honest. We all love Thai food. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Like, who doesn't like Thai food? Yeah.
But it's a matter of like, are you ordering pad Thai when you go to a Thai restaurant, or are you ordering the sausage, like the Isan sausage?
Sour.
Yeah.
Well, because there's another couple on the show. And they're both Indian. And the woman Deepti, her name is Deepti, and then the man's name is Sheikh, which is short for something. I forgot what it was, but you know, like by their names, they were able to be like, oh, you're Indian. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But Natalie is not a Korean name, so.
Youngmi, I think it should become a new goal for us to get cast in a reality TV show.
Like Love is Blind. Do you want to get cast on Love is Blind?
No, I would.
I would.
I want to get cast in The Amazing Race. It's my favorite reality show of all time.
That one's is that the one where they just drop you off somewhere and you have to like find your way
you have to like
or something?
do these challenges in these random locales, and I think we should submit an application on behalf of our podcast. It'd be good clout for our podcast, and
you and I.
Yeah, it'll be Youngmi and Brian podcast hosts, and it would just be us being fucking so bad and navigating in like Bangalore.
I don't know what this says about me, Brian, and our relationship, but I would love to do that with you. I feel like we would do good. You know what I mean? I feel like we would do really good. Right? Like I feel like we would figure it out.
I think we'd do good.
Hour or two, you're like, I'm hot. I don't have any water. And I'm like, Brian, come on, Brian. And then we like tell each other jokes. We're like so bad at surviving.
Oh God. Let's make it happen. Listeners, also, by the way, we got to share this on our Instagram at some point, but someone made us a bootleg t-shirt from the Chris Ying episode.
From the Chris Ying episode?
No.
Oh,
from the Yang Go episode, we talked about bootleg t-shirts, and
oh my God, somebody made one.
I think
bootleg
we should make
merch.
that our merch. It's like so good.
Okay, I swear to God, our merch idea is you as a listener make the shirts. We will sell them on our website, and we will give you like a cut, or just give you all the money because we don't really like, right? And then we'll donate the money to charity. That's like a great idea.
Business is our passion.
That's actually a good idea. That's sweet. You make the merch. We're outsourcing it, and then all the profit will donate it to Asian charities.
Oh, I was kind of hoping that we would keep some of the profit to reinvest in the podcast, but yeah. Let's just do that instead.
I love that idea. I don't know how to like make that happen, but I love that. It's so like DIY.
Yeah. Well, Youngmi, in any case, we're back in the studio. 2 weeks off, baby. But before we dive into the hot tea, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling, this is a big thing for me because I know, as always, I talk about this a lot, and I think it's important because as I have said, it's like a lifelong journey. I have, like issues with body dysmorphia, and I'm at such a good place with it right now.
Wow.
But which
Let's
is
go.
hard. Yeah, because like, if you suffer from like body dysmorphia or any sort of like eating disorders or body stuff, you know that for me, it's like when I wake up, it's like the first thing that's in my head. I feel bad about or guilty about my body, and it's like I'm at this point where like the negative feeling is there first, and then I'll try to like align it with some sort of issue that makes it justified. Like, for example, I'll feel like shit when I wake up, and then I'll be like, oh my God, last night I ate McDonald's, like that. Like I'll feel bad first, and then I'll like put a reason behind that negative feeling.
Right.
But I feel like with the practice of trying to like heal myself from that, I kind of go through the bad feeling, and then I'll say something like I ate McDonald's, and then I'll be like, that's not real. You look fine. You don't look like shit. Like, that's not real. And you don't have to feel bad about that. So I'm at like this place right now. And I'm just going to say one thing. Like I said on the podcast a few months ago, I started taking Adderall for ADD, and I feel like it's like a little too strong for me. So I've sort of like tapered down, and I use like a very low dose. But what I've noticed, and if anyone's listening to this that's like a mental health care professional, please let me know if this is accurate. What I've noticed about the Adderall is that it's helped me so much with body dysmorphia. Like those overwhelming, crippling feelings like of anxiety about food and my body have like really gone away.
Whoa. That's great. And when would you say that, like, it sounds like you have engaged in this practice where you can like curb yourself from giving strength to these anxieties. Like you catch yourself and you're like, oh, this is dumb. Are you saying that, do you do that and then it stops, or do you feel yourself reaching a point where like those anxious thoughts like aren't even popping up as frequently anymore?
I think it's both. It's both. Like one thing is that they're not as frequent.
Yeah.
But when they come, it's like very mild, and it's like very easy to control.
Yeah.
But body dysmorphia is such a bizarre thing. If anyone has it, please,
it sounds fucking terrible.
You'll feel me, because like you literally will go through your phone.
Yeah.
Or like, let's say somebody takes a picture of you and you're just like, I look like a fucking mutant. Like I look so disgusting, right? And you look at and you're just like, oh my God, I look like fucking horrible. And then in that moment, when that moment passes, you go back and look at that picture and you look totally different. It's like it's so intense. It's like literally it puts goggles on you. And it makes you look like repulsive. And then now now that I've like worked away from it, I'm like scrolling. I was just like scrolling through my old pictures because I was looking at Mino's, it was Mino's birthday. So I was just looking at old pictures of Mino. And I was like, oh, I remember thinking in this picture that I looked repulsive. And I'm like, I look totally like exactly the same as I do now. Why did I think I look so it's really interesting to have those goggles like taken away. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, I'm really glad that you've managed it, because I know it's, you've struggled with it throughout the entirety of this podcast, and it comes and goes in waves. So it makes me happy that you're in a good place with it in this moment.
It's definitely not gone. It's just, it's like like most issues in life, it's like hills and valleys. But right now I'm at like a really good place with it, and I feel very light. It's very like light feeling, Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thanks. How are you feeling, Brian?
I'm feeling okay. So it's been a couple weeks since we've last recorded, and since then I am feeling a lot of different emotions. So the first one that I guess is just more at the top of my mind is that like one of our friends just recently moved to LA, and normally when that happens, you're obviously like very happy for them, because if any of your friends moves to start a new job, it's like a joyous occasion, and you want all the best for their success. But as I've gotten older, when these things happen, or like when a friend moves away, it makes me so sad. I was so sad. Then, and I was talking about it with my girlfriend, and I just feel that right now I feel like the number of friendships I have remaining in my life are finite. And it's like, if a big relocation happens, it just impacts me a lot more. And I know it's just a scarcity mindset that I've applied to friendships, because I have lost friends because of different life circumstances. You know, like some of my friends are married and have kids, and they link up with other parents because you have that shared bond. But you know, I am not in that life stage, so I am left with friends who are in a similar life stage as me, who are like focused on their career and don't have children. But when I lose someone in my immediate proximity from that roster of people that I can reach out to, it like makes me feel lonely, and it makes me feel a lot more sad. It makes me feel very sad, because I realize that like it just feels that like connecting with people on a deep level, this is quite cynical of me, but it's so rare to like meet people that you really connect with and vibe with. And I find it like happening less frequently as I've gotten older, because when I was in college, like it's so easy to make friends. You're just like around people all the time and you just connect. But as it's like this it's almost this like inverse thing that happens, where as you get older, I come into my own more. I know what I like and don't like. I have better boundaries. I don't tolerate as much bullshit. But with that, I've become more selective with who I want to really spend my time with. And so when one of those friends who I've like learned to really value and admire like leaves, it just made me really sad. And it's not like a permanent thing, obviously. With the internet, you can like keep in touch online, and obviously you can text each other, but I don't know, just like the physical departure, it made me really sad. So does that make sense?
So sad. Well, I whenever that kind of stuff happens to me, I have this thinking like it's such a like primitive emotion. Do you know what I mean? Like back in the old days, sorry not to be Joe Rogan-y, but like in the caveman days, you would never lose your 25 people in your little caveman crew. Yeah. Or unless they died.
Yeah.
Like people just didn't go away, and I think that's like a very primitive emotion to be like, this is my fucking caveman crew.
Right.
And I feel those very deep feelings when people move, or when I move apartments, which seems very like, oh, who gives a shit? But like, I was like trying to honor my like primitive emotions, being like, that's a big deal. Like, biologically, it's weird. Yeah, it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. So that happens. And then the other thing that I've been feeling is, I guess maybe somewhat tangentially related. It's also related to the tea of the episode, but I've been feeling very independent in that like in these past 2 weeks I've set aside time to, this sounds so cliche and LA. I guess this is like a loosely Joe Rogan themed episode, but
why are we so judgmental of ourselves? Both of us, like before we say anything, I was like, I don't want to sound like Joe Rogan. You're like, I don't want to sound LA. Well, whatever. This is us. We're Joe Rogan-y in LA.
I feel very independent, and in these past 2 weeks, I've really set aside time to focus on personal work and like my own projects. In that, like. And partially it was inspired by this is so funny. So I've been I've seen the Kanye West documentary on Netflix.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
And say what you will, but Kanye West is someone who, he put in the work. Like he's someone, one thing that I took away from the Kanye West documentary is the love that Donda, his mother, had for her son is just so tender and beautiful, and you can really see how Kanye like developed the self-confidence and self-belief in himself that he really was going to like everyone would know his name one day, but it was propped up by like the unwavering like support and love that his mom provided for him, because throughout like they show clips and it was just so touching to see like her providing like constructive feedback for his work, but like she is truly his number one fan of being like, you're the best, like you're truly the best, Kanye. Like I love that verse of yours. And I'm like, oh fuck, that right there, like you can really see where he developed that confidence to be like, I am the fucking shit. Like I'm so good. And granted, like he had the talent to back it up, but it was really illuminating to see this documentary. And one, like he had this crazy work at like this devotion to his work. Like he put in the hours. Like he was this crazy producer, produced so many beats, and like there's this moment where, you know, he really had to overcome the stigma of like not being perceived as a rapper, because everyone wanted to just shoehorn him as just a producer who made beats. Like people like kind of cast him aside and be like, you can't rap, like just stick to making your beats. And I could see how, because Kanye was kind of, in my opinion, he was kind of annoying, like kind of really like clingy about it. And just like anyone that would give him attention, he would just like spit bars and be like, look, I'm a rapper. And that quality is something that I don't like, I'm working on. I have a hard time owning up in my own work, because like he's an example of someone who he truly believes like he's the best and he deserves it, and it comes off as like annoying because it's like that, like we all know, like it's one thing to like intellectualize it, but it's another thing to actually practice it, to be like, you got to follow up with people. You just got to be the most annoying person. And like, you hear the stories of people like, I called him like 10,000 times a day. And like, eventually I just broke him down. And eventually he gave me that one chance, you know? Like, Kanye is like kind of like that in a nutshell, but he also is an immense talent and has it to like back it up, you know? But in my own work, I probably call like one time and then they don't pick up.
You're scared.
All right, whatever, I guess it's not gonna happen. Or like, oh, do you want to like listen to this? Like, no worries if not. Like, if you're
if not.
And it's super inspiring to see an artist who has that unwavering self-belief in himself. And so I felt partially inspired from the documentary, and just like life changes that have been going on with me of like, okay, well, you know what, I should produce work that is solely for me, and let's just see where that takes me. And like after like 2 or 3 days of that, I immediately felt myself going back into that sort of cycle of like, oh right, like let's write, I'm gonna write. And then after looking at my Word doc, I'm like, I'm so bad at writing, like what the fuck is this?
I can't write. It's so hard, Brian. I've been trying. Well, actually, can I just say something about the Kanye thing? I think that, you know, he gets like, obviously, right, I'm not like saying what he's doing to Kim is great. Like, I understand
that's a whole other conversation. Yeah,
I understand why the, you know, society has villainized him, and I agree. But also, I think it's a complicated, nuanced conversation. Like, he was like a black man growing up in America, and like nobody fucking gives you a chance here. It's a rate, you know, it's like, it's very hard for black people. And like the fact that he could propel himself into stardom, it's like every time I think somebody becomes famous from like a marginalized community in this country, it's like fucking amazing, you know? And yes, also, of course, he's very talented, but, and you know, obviously there's like, it is bordering on pathological, but it's almost like that's how you have to be, you know, like that's how you have to be for anyone to like give you a chance here. So I understand part of why he's like that, and I'm glad that you found inspiration. Like you are picking up a good message from that, which is you have to really advocate for yourself, you know?
Right. And you know, in the process of that, like I'm trying to find like advocates to be like who can vouch for me, and in doing so you have to sell yourself, you know. And so in the past 2 weeks I on a Word document I wrote down like career accolades, all of the things that I have like done for myself or things I've accomplished, and seeing it all in a list, it made me feel it made me feel proud of myself in a way that I haven't felt in a while. In that, like,
That's great.
you know, when we're in the rat race of things, it's hard. I don't think I realize how much I've really done, and taking time to just do that. I felt proud of myself. Like, that made me feel very happy. Of like, damn, like I have done a lot, and I don't give myself enough credit for it. So that was like a good practice. So if any of you listeners out there who are in creative fields or just anything, like, I think it's a good practice just to write down, like, I think you'd surprise yourself by how much you've accomplished, because, you know, when you're in it, it's hard. You have your blinders on.
It's
and
hard.
You just don't see. Yeah.
You know what I think about in that respect? I feel like life feels like a A24 movie where it's like, it feels like nothing is happening. Right. But then if you sit down and think, you're like, oh, a lot of stuff happened. But do you know what I mean? Like, while you're watching an A24 movie, you're like, nothing is happening for 2 hours. And then at the end, you're like, oh my God. Like, you have to sit down and like, and then she died. Like, you know, like you have to like list all these things. Life feels like an A24 movie. Damn,
that's Youngmi Mayer, spin some bars. Life be like a A24 movie.
I'm going to become a rapper. Oh my God, the other day I was with my friend and I was like, I've never rapped in my life, but like we were talking about how Megan Thee Stallion is so talented as a rapper.
Right.
And I was like, I told my friend, I was like, what if one of us was really good at rapping, but we just never tried it, so we didn't know, and then we tried rapping? Nope, not good at it.
Oh no.
I'm not good at it.
Youngmi, are you going to release the tapes?
No, I was like, what if I'm really good at rapping? I've never tried it. And then I tried it. Nope, I'm not a good rapper, everyone.
Nope,
so
absolutely one of the hardest art forms there is.
So hard. I still respect Megan Thee Stallion. I'm like, how is she doing this? This is such talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited that you did that, and I'm glad that you said that, because I think a lot of people feel that way. It's like it's hard to sort of it's hard to advocate for yourself, you know? But you have to.
I know. We got to channel our Kanye energy.
Especially if you don't have a supportive mom. You know, like my parents were not at all. They're like, don't do anything. You suck. And I was like, oh. Like I had to fight through that.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that you even made it this far in spite of that is like fucking sick.
See? Yeah.
All right. Well, to the T.
You know what I want to say? Yeah, the T. I guess I don't want to.
To the T.
I was like, you know, so the T is that I think we came to the conclusion that we love the podcast. It means a lot to us. This is something, you know, we're so thankful for everyone that's listening. And I know Brian and I both care about it deeply.
I'm on the edge of my seat right now.
No, I'm just telling the listeners. It's not new information to you, but it's just like we do have creative differences, and I think they were just like coming to a head. But you know what I was thinking about, Brian, and and this is I'm really glad actually that we're talking about this on the podcast. I think if I'm really, and I'm not like trying to be critical of myself, but I'm trying to understand myself. I think a lot of the issues that I had between us, you know, some of them were valid, and I am not like sitting here pretending everything's my fault, or obviously you know that I'm not doing that. Yeah. But I think a lot of the feelings and the deep emotions that like negative emotions that I had about our relationship came from a place of like my insecurity. And talking to you about all this, I could see that we were both coming from that kind of point of view. And I think most people do when you do have a argument with somebody, you know, you're coming from your place of insecurity or hurt.
Right.
And I think seeing that helped me realize that besides the valid problems that I had with our working relationship, I also had these feelings that were kind of unfounded. And I don't think I've said this to you yet, but I think one of the feelings that I had, and, you know, obviously I'm not trying to like say how you feel, and if I'm wrong, please disagree, and I think now I see that I was wrong. One of the feelings that I had was that like you didn't like care or like this like you didn't like it, like the podcast or care. And I see now that I think that was coming from maybe a place of my insecurity, like this is something that I really want to do, and in my head I was just kind of like, oh, Brian's just kind of like putting up with it. And I know that that's not real, that's not true, but I think that was what was making me feel emotional.
Yeah, I mean, well, for one, it's interesting that you say that because well, just to provide a little bit more color for our listeners, I liken this podcast and our working relationship to, it's just like any other relationship. Like, obviously, we're strictly professional, but it felt like it's like getting into a fight with your partner, and there's a lot of like emotions that spill over, and when, in a romantic partnership, you're kind of like, okay, is this going to work between us? And trying to meet a middle ground to resolve and mend the relationship. It's not like between like you or me, like fixing you, fixing me. It's about what can we do, and is it worth staying together to fix this relationship? And so that's basically what happened, is that, we obviously are our own people and we have creative differences. And I think just like the stresses of, the live show and et cetera, it boiled over and we had a little rough patch. And, I get it. Like, I have expressed before how, but that's the thing though, is like, I care immensely about this podcast to the point where the thing that was so jarring for me and what kind of led me to this feeling of, oh, I got to be independent now, is this podcast is in many ways really all that I have. I so much of my free time is devoted strictly to this. And, with any creative partnership, it's not entirely yours. Like, you are sharing a percentage stake in a project, and at any moment, just like any relationship, it could end. And I think the stark reality of that made me like, oh fuck, I should focus on myself and do things on my own accord, just for my own self-preservation, because it's just like a romantic partnership. If I don't have any friends outside of my relationship or have my own hobbies or do anything, that's also unhealthy. And it just, because that's literally the definition of codependency, of like, and that's suffocating, and but yeah, like I've expressed before on this podcast how, there's moments where I've felt like, oh, what can we do to shake this up? Or because it's like work in a way, you kind of get into this groove, and for me it goes like up and down. There's moments where I'm super fucking amped about this podcast, and needless, like I want to go on the record and make it very clear that it is an immense privilege to even be in this position to do a podcast like this, and to be able to have interesting conversations with people that I've looked up to for, like X amount of years or that. Like, it's so sick that we've grown to a level where we get to speak to just such interesting people. But like it's like at times it does feel like work, and at times I'm just kind of like, let's just do it. It can feel stale. We're on autopilot. And for that, I'll be accountable for that. There are moments where I do that, and I apologize if you felt that and it made you feel or doubt your own like feelings about this project. But I want to stress that I do feel very I am very like this in an almost unhealthy way. Like, this is all I care about and all I have,
I mean, I hear you say that. I know it's like not all you have, because I know that there are other things, but I think I was like internalizing a lot of stuff that you were saying, maybe in an incorrect way, like, because you would say, I think this is just like you were just being my friend and telling me like, oh, you like when you were saying, oh, you know, people are getting acting jobs and I want like an acting job, and like I want,
Right.
you know, like I would like to be like, I thought this movie was great and I want to do something like that. And I was like, I was just kind of feeling like, oh, like I think I was internalizing that as like you being like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm just like doing this because this is this thing, you know, like, which is unfair to you because, you know what I mean? Because like I would, and totally. I get it because we've talked about this, like, you know, whenever you see somebody doing something cool and you feel sort of left behind, you know, like that's like a feeling that is common and you've expressed that. And I think you're just being very honest about that. But
totally,
I think I was internalizing it like, oh, I guess this is just like not what Brian would want to do or something. That was a big part of it. And I think that was that's like what I was feeling. But also, but I honestly feel like, you know, through your work in the podcast and, you know, how much work you put into it, you have shown so much that you do care about it. It's just, maybe I was just like internalizing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Incorrectly.
Yeah. I mean, again, but it goes like, that's the thing though, is like we had all of these difficult, we've had all of these difficult conversations over the course of these past couple of weeks. Like, you know, listeners, and it was all like very civil, but I've, you know, for a hot minute, I was so stressed and like freaking out and being like, oh shit, this thing that we've worked so hard to build, and like it just like it made me realize how it isn't permanent, you know?
Yeah.
Like, in spite of me saying things like, oh, you know, I want to act or do this, when I say that, like in my mind, like this podcast is like, it's just going to be a constant. It's just there, you know, it's just, it's just there. And, you know, we had these difficult conversations where it would, we could potentially be in a reality where like it wouldn't be there anymore. But the thing is, like, it's, you know, you express your insecurities to me, but I also have insecurities about, like directed towards you in the opposite direction, because like, and I think that is also what has sort of lit a fire under my ass to create more work with my name on it, because in many ways, I mean, like, you have this thriving social media presence that is, and it happened over the course of this podcast. Like, you have this amazing TikTok where you showcase your brand of humor, and it and you know, it's not like, in a way it felt that made me feel like you don't need this as much as I do, if that makes sense. Like, you have this huge like, you yourself are known. People know you for your work, you know, and people know you for this podcast too. But on my own accord, I think I was just investing most of my energy into this podcast. And I think in the beginning stages, like, we needed to, because we didn't really know what we were doing, really. Like, just like anything new, it just takes you longer time to figure things out. I think now we've reached a place where we're both very good at what we do, and we can be very proud of what we've built, because it was really fucking hard to build this podcast and get to this point. Now, if I'm being entirely honest, there's probably a small part of me, there is an element of me that maybe might have doubled down into my investment in this, just so I didn't have to confront with the insecurities that I have in producing my own work outside of it, if that makes sense, you know, instead of being like, oh, this isn't a good place, now I can free up some creative energy to write or produce my own comedy work that doesn't, that is solely mine, that showcases me as an individual, my name and my work. And instead of like just doing it, maybe it's scary putting your work out there, you know, writing something and putting out into the world. And so I admire you a lot in that regard, in that you can just like put yourself out there, and it's and for good matter, because you know you impact a lot of people and you make so many people laugh. But maybe I went in the other direction of like, oh well, I'm just gonna double down like even harder on the podcast, because I don't know, it's so like messy and complicated. But yeah, like this was hard. This was such a fucking difficult past 2 weeks when we took a little break just to like gather our thoughts, Youngmi. And granted, like I had you know, there was like frustration, there was anger, but not only like directed at you, but a lot of it was directed at myself, of just being like, what am I doing with my life, you know?
Well, maybe that's really interesting to hear, because I was like, that's like really interesting, because but I want to say another thing is, the past few years have been very difficult. You know, obviously everyone knows, like with the pandemic, and we all, I think, emotionally reacted in a different way. And for me, I just sort of like fucking threw spaghetti at a wall. I was just like, fuck this, I'm gonna fucking die, you know, like, and I fucking, to be honest, I lost my mind in a certain way, and I think everyone can relate to that. And I think maybe your reaction, again, I'm just like saying this, like, maybe your reaction was to like try to find security and safety, and that's like how you responded in your career, like, you know, like sort of focus on something that has momentum and like really put your energy into it. Whereas now I was just like, like what the fuck, you know, like I'm just gonna like make fucking dick videos or whatever. And so, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that we both as creatives went our routes. But I'm happy to hear that like you came out after these 2 weeks with like this newfound energy to like maybe advocate for yourself, you know, like what you were talking about with the Kanye documentary. You're like, I have to do this, and I have to just sort of like maybe shift away from like just feeling like having to like double down on something that feels really secure, and just like go out there now, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm glad that you like can recognize that without because you know I want to stress that I am very proud of this thing that we've built together, and it's almost this double-edged sword, in that I think over the course of this podcast, and I think our listeners all know that we're very different people. Our approach to work is very different. We are like diametrically opposite in many, many ways. And but I also think that, you know, that is also what makes this partnership and dynamic work in many ways too. In that, I agree. I think like I'll be I'll admit that you in things that I lack, you know, whether it is in terms of like intuition, spontaneity, and just overall kind of being like being comfortable with things being messy. I think you excel at that tremendously, and I will acknowledge that you fill in those gaps for me, and it's something that I wish I had more of, and I do my best to replicate. But again, like, because we are so diametrically opposite, there is like so much friction that happens, because it's just like we're in a creative partnership with each other. But I do stress that, and I don't think it's uncommon, because I see so many memes on Twitter of like, this is every podcast dynamic, and it's like a guy in a suit, and then the other person's like wearing like a clown outfit, you know? Are women human beings? No, but but right, I think, okay, so I want to say this. I think the issue for me was that because we are different, I think both of us actually, forgive me if I'm speaking for you, but I think both of us felt this. I felt that like both of us felt like the other person was not appreciating our positive attributes. Do you know what I mean? 100,000%.
And I think like I feel like
100,000%.
that's how I felt. I was like, well, Brian's really good and he's very organized and he's like on top of all his shit. But I'm not like that. But I do bring this to the table, and I feel like Brian doesn't see that. And I feel like you felt that way. You're like, Youngmi is like funny and like whatever, loud and crazy, but I like keep this shit running, and Youngmi doesn't see that about me. And I think that moving on, we should really both of us recognize that, you know, and I said this to you during, you know, our many conversations. Yeah. There's no part of me that feels like you are not like doing your role, like doing something for the podcast. Like, there's never in my mind that I think, oh, like whatever, Brian doesn't do anything. I visibly, I can see, I can see and feel your input in this podcast, and I recognize it as extremely integral and important to the podcast. There's never been, do you know what I mean? Because I just want to stress that, because I feel like both of us are feeling that way, like the other person thinks that about the other person, and I really don't think that's true. I think both of us really respect and each other's work. Also, Brian, are people listening to this right now? Like, what is this? Do you think they're gonna be into this? What? Like, we're just like, we had an argument, and like, do you think people are listening to this? What they're loving this? No,
that's so funny.
Do you think they turned this off already 15 minutes ago? They're like, fuck, what the fuck is going on?
What the fuck is this shit?
What? This is like
what?
This is like, you know what this feels? Yeah, they're like, what the hell is going on here?
No, people are listening to this. Okay, they're loving this. This is exactly like Love Is Blind reunion. This is exactly
seriously
Behind the Rose Bachelor reunion.
Did you know I was Asian? Wait, no, but doesn't this feel like one of those like VH1 Behind the Music, like Creed back at like God. We broke up, what happened, man? Like it does feel very much, it does weirdly feel like a romantic relationship where it's 100%. Like it's a lot calmer, I think, because like in a romantic relationship, because like sex is involved, I'm so crazy when I fight with people. But like this is psychologically similar, but I think it's a lot calmer because like
we just need
like,
a good
adults.
voiceover. Like, despite all of the confetti-filled Instagram photos of them smiling together, something more sinister lurked beneath.
It's Brian and Youngmi, behind the podcast A24 movie.
This is the A24 version. However, you know what? Same wavelength. Too. As we were just talking, I was like, what is happening? But you know what? Oh,
who knows? This is what they love. The listeners love this.
Hey, it's not just the listeners. We love it too. I think that's the thing. This is like the buttoned up version of me that's like, are we showing our cards too much? Like, if you go to any if there was any corporation that has like a brand strategy team, I don't think any of them would ever be like, argue on camera. Let's show our audience that we don't. Sometimes we don't have our shit together and things are real rocky and bad. No, but I will stress that
this is our strength. Yeah.
I will stress that it is, again, you know, this is our podcast is about being real. I think that's the beauty of the nature of a podcast, is that it's a very intimate medium. And fuck it, you know, we built this really great community with like all of our listeners. It's fucking nutso that like we get to do these live shows and be in a room full of Asian people and laugh at like really stupid shit. It's fucking amazing. But I mean, with that, like, I don't want to hide anything, you know? This is like something that's very
We're bringing you along.
This is something very stressful, and that happened. Like, I was a wreck. My IBS went haywire.
I'm sorry.
I was
sorry, Brian.
I was rock climbing so much against my own will. Not because
oh God. But I was like drinking white wine a lot. So like, that's like our coping mechanism. I was just drinking some white wine, let me tell you.
No, but it is like I think you said it very succinctly and very it's very well said, in that and I think this is something that if you're one of the very few listeners that has reached this far, and any partnership, I think like what was revealed between us and this rough patch that we went through is that it was a very strong feeling on both of our ends, where we both felt very unappreciated.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it grew into this resentment towards each other. And and I'm glad that this happened, because there's just
I think
no
that was
way.
the core of it.
Right. I think that's like the actual core of it, is that both of us
Yep.
felt unappreciated and towards each other. And it's like, we tried our best to just like bury it and be like, everything's fine through gritted teeth. But it just can't. It can't continue if we feel that way.
And I think, partially, I think both of us just, that was like maybe coming from ourselves, but also I think we should do a practice where we just tell each other that, Brian, I appreciate you and the work that you do for the podcast, and I see it. I've never once thought that you weren't doing any, it's very apparent that you do a lot of work, and a lot of times I feel bad because I can see the work that you put into it, and I want you to know that I deeply respect your work and your input.
Thank you, Youngmi. And is this what we're gonna do? This is where it's really, our listeners are like, what is this?
This is positivity. This is not toxic. It's just positivity.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I can admit that I'm very for lack of a better word, I can be quite micromanagerial. I'm a perfectionist. I'm pretty type A. I'm organized, and with that, I can be quite stubborn in that I feel that things should be a certain way, and that's not easy. Working with someone like that isn't easy. And I think through working with you, I've said this before, like it has also been a practice for myself to just trust the process more and put trust into other people. But we've said this in our private conversations, but Youngmi, I appreciate that you are unabashedly you, and you bring us an irreverent sense of humor, and I am not you. I can't replicate you. So much of your personality is integral to what we've built together thus far, and I agree. Like I don't express that to you and tell you that I appreciate everything that you do for this podcast as well, because I think it's particularly difficult working with someone like me, where everything that comes out of my mouth does feel like criticism at times, where it's like, you should have done it this way, you should do it that way, you should do it this way. And it's like, I think I try to make a lot of those things about like structural, but again, like when it's at a hit clip and so frequent, it can get quite exhausting. And I agree. Like I haven't in that regard, like I haven't been the best creative partner that I could be in expressing to you that I'm acutely aware that if it was a podcast of just another co-host who is just like me, that's just gonna be fucking boring as hell.
I mean, I don't think you're boring, Brian. I think you have a creative presence, and I really appreciate it, and I thank you for saying that. And I think we do. I think we work really well together, and I think I don't want you to feel like I think that you're like boring or whatever you just said about yourself.
No, it's fine. I get it. Okay.
But thank you for saying that. I appreciate.
You have pink hair.
It.
You're wearing a pink juicy velour tracksuit, and I am wearing a polo. Like it is.
No, I find you genuinely very funny, and I value your input in the podcast. And I do think that your perspective is very valuable, and I think a lot of people are here to listen to your voice and your point of view. And I don't want you to feel, both of us put this input into this podcast, and that's what makes it feeling Asian. So
absolutely. So, but this was a bit of an odd episode, but we had to do it.
No one's here anymore. No one's here. We can just say whatever you want.
We had to do it, but I want to stress that I am proud of myself and and of us, that if it were me in the past, I don't think I would have had these tough conversations where we could like work through them and compromise through them. because it's a lot easier to just walk away from conflict.
Yeah.
And I felt
Yeah.
that, you know, like when during this rough patch, there were moments where I for sure felt I was like, you know what, like fuck it. It's not. This is like, it fucking sucks, but whatever. Like, just fuck it. And and so for that, like I'm proud of myself for just for, you know, being receptive to your feelings and emotions while also being able to express mine and being able to work through all of this. Because I definitely wouldn't have been able to do that, you know, in a past version of myself, because it's like I said, I would have just fucking walked away and like out of sight, out of mind. That's it.
Yeah. Can I say something that I learned in therapy about intimacy and friendships?
Totally.
My therapist was like, the thing is, like, a lot, it's true, like before I would have totally walked away from this. I would have been like, this BS is not worth it. And it not just in like professional working relationships like this, but in romantic or friendships or anything like that, right? And my therapist was like, that's like the issue with a fear of intimacy, because to have a relationship with someone is to go through rough patches like this, and then you come out, and then you have like a stronger bond, right? And that bond is like stronger. So like our working relationship now is stronger because of this, what we just experienced. But a lot of times before, when I was younger, I would get to this point and just leave, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, why am I so lonely? I don't have any friends. I don't have a fucking, you know, I don't have anybody that means anything to me. Because the first sign of like confrontation, I would just like quit.
Right.
And so I just feel like I just wanted to say that because it reminds me of what you were saying in the beginning about friendships, you know? Yeah. So I think it's value, like, you know, if it sounds really corny, like a self-help book, but it's like relationships, like like things like this happen, and you need to like fight through to make it stronger. So I'm happy that we resolved it, and I do feel a lot more secure in our working partnership, and I'm really excited. But also, Brian, I just want to say one thing. Should we record a What Are You Ashamed About for our Patreon? Because we need a bonus episode. Because I can go. Let's go, Brian.
Oh my God.
We could just...
Oh, fuck.
Now that we're in like a nice, positive mood.
Okay, Youngmi. So, listeners... listener who has made it this far.
Listener. The one thank you so much, listener.
Let's hope that you are a Patreon subscriber, because if not, the episode comes to an end here for you. Okay, listeners, as you know, we have a Patreon. Please support the podcast. We have some big things in the works for this year, and we promise. All of your donations are being reinvested into the operations of this. We're continually broke because we don't fucking pay ourselves, but
we don't.
Listener, so if you want to hear the answer to this next question, you're gonna have to subscribe to our Patreon. Now that we're in this weird therapy-like mood, Youngmi, what is something you're ashamed of this week? All right.
So before we end the episode, should we say something we're proud of? You kind of said it already on the Patreon episode. We're back to the regular episode, right?
We're back to the regular episode.
I'm proud of us. I'm proud of Feeling Asian. I'm proud of our work together, and I'm proud that we figured out this little rough patch and we got stronger for it.
Yeah,
I'm proud of that.
Like you said, Youngmi, I truly do believe that the fact that we were able to work through this together, I think that we have a better understanding and a stronger mutual respect for each other's creative processes and work. And I feel that since those conversations, that our working relationship has gotten stronger, and I'm really excited for what's to come for this podcast, because we already have some really, really exciting guests lined up for you all. So listener, if you
hopefully Natalie
listener, if you're
or
here.
the one person that's
You
left.
spread the word. Grab a megaphone and tell everyone that we have some fucking fire ass guests coming up on Feeling Asian. But
And
yeah, you know,
I want to thank the one person that's left listening. Thank you for listening to our entire argument about the podcast beef. Oh my god.
the
Can
great
you
beef.
imagine?
But you know what?
Podcast
Mark it on
drama.
your calendars. There's the pre-beef and the post-beef.
Well, thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow our podcast, you can follow at Feeling Asian Podcast on social media. You can follow Brian at It's Brian Park.
And you
Everywhere?
can follow Youngmi on Instagram and Twitter at YNMayor and follow her on TikTok at Youngmi Mayor.
And that's it. Please support our Patreon if possible. Bye.
Bye.